Thank you for listening to the Unscripted Dreams Podcast with Joe and Marcus. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email us at unscripteddreams@gmail.com. If you're interested in listening to exclusive content that includes bonus episodes and our hindsight video series, please join us on Patreon at the Unscripted Dreams Podcast. If you're listening to our podcast on YouTube, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. Thank you.
We're good.
As we know, life is full of surprises, both good and bad. The day-to-day journey is full of unforeseen obstacles, and sometimes it's hard to see our way through. Beyond the norm and mundane are where unscripted dreams live. Join us for thought-provoking discussions and interviews to help us navigate through the fog and create our own path. We are the Unscripted Dream Podcast, operating outside the margins to motivate and inspire our audience. So today, people, the episode is Curiosity. Curiosity killed the cat, so to speak. Horrible, right? Well, before we open this up, here goes some things to think about with curiosity, because we don't necessarily want to focus on it just being all negative. We also wanted to let you know how positive it is too. Like, how could you spark curiosity with fear? You really can't do much if you have fear in sight. That goes against what curiosity is in most cases. And also think about, how could you learn without curiosity? At some point you have to take a leap of faith. So that means you got to eliminate fear. And then lastly, how could one ever grow without learning? So at some point you have to be curious to push your agenda forward. And that's what we want to focus on today.
Yeah, that last one was good, Joe. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for curiosity, for me, like you were saying, Joe, there's good and bad, and I think we'll discuss both aspects. But when I think about curiosity, I kind of think about the origins of like my curiosity and how things kind of started. So I can remember just the earliest incident of me asking a lot of questions was when I was a kid. I can recall asking my dad like so many questions. Like I would just ask him like, why? And he would, like, sometimes I would catch him up and he would, like, I would ask him something that he really had to think about. But and then there were other times where, as kids, like, you overdo it. Sometimes I overdid it. And then he would tell me to stop asking questions for that period of time. But I think what was important for that and with curiosity is that for me, my dad just growing up, like, he never discouraged me from being curious. He always supported me asking questions and acknowledged when I would ask him a good question. So I think that was important. Just as a foundational tool for me to, always be curious, because I would find out things that I didn't know. And then you sometimes, you find things that you weren't intending to find, but you discover them anyway. And
right,
I think that's important.
Yeah, it develops character, man. So, it actually takes a lot of intelligence on your pop's end to, push that agenda forward. People don't realize, even though it may be annoying for the time being, that's very important for a child to grow and develop to being something great, whether people realize that or not. With me being the only child on record, as far as I know, I'm kidding, but seriously, I don't know. But, yeah, man, the running agenda, the rumor has it, with you being the only child, you're kind of subjected to being curious just because you don't have much around you to go off of. So it really drives you to be a little bit more on the wild side, so to speak. I don't necessarily agree with that 100%. But to an extent, I do agree as far as you just putting yourself out there. I can relate as far as me being curious under the circumstances of not waiting on anybody to do something for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm probably one of the best people to ask about curiosity, just because I have explored many avenues in my young life to push my agenda forward. So let's move forward as far as why curiosity is important. And I have 4 questions for you, or 4 statements rather. And
Okay.
let me know if you actually agree with them. Okay.
Yeah,
The first statement would be it makes your mind active instead of passive.
I agree.
And the reason why that statement should be valid, or it is valid, is because you always have to be on the run, with curiosity. Your mind never slows down because, like Marcus was explaining earlier, you're always geared to ask questions, search for the answers. Um, you got to keep going, and it actually strengthens your mental process. It's like actually a brain exercise to stay active, and curiosity drives that. Let's move on to the second one. It makes your mind observant of new ideas.
Yes, agreed.
And that correlates to momentum. Once you get going, you can't stop. So you just keep rolling and rolling and rolling through the cycle. If no one's there to stop you, you keep coming up with more things. So it's great from an innovative perspective.
Yeah, I think that one especially. I think that one, Joe's good because like you're saying, once you get going, like once you become like your curiosity hits kind of a certain level, you become inquisitive about a lot of things. You don't. I guess you stop. I guess the way kind of for me is that I guess I used to like passively experience things like like going to the store or just going to certain events and things like that. But now that my focus has shifted and I'm a little bit more inquisitive about things in the business from a business standpoint, like I'm going to the store, I'm looking at how they manage the flow. I'm curious about the systems that businesses use. I'm curious about like the morale of the employees. Like those are things that I'm looking for when I go out, because I think I just want to see, I want to get a better understanding of the environment, the places that I choose to put myself in. And,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to understand that to the best of my ability. But also from a business standpoint, I want to pick up if there's anything I observe that could be useful for my business. I want to be open to that as well.
Well, I think you crushed number 3. Number 3 is it opens up new worlds and possibilities.
Uh, that was not intentional. I had no idea.
Nah, man,
That
that's
was the next
great.
one.
That's
So,
awesome. Well, then let's move on to number 4. Since you
all right.
debunked that one, it brings excitement into your life. That, from my experience, is 100% true. Without curiosity, there's no excitement. Uh,
I don't know, man. It's twofold. It's twofold because with like I mean, I know we'll get into it, but that's like, yes, absolutely. It brings a level of excitement when you explore new things and you find things or you see things in a way that you've never seen them before.
mm-hmm.
But sometimes you find things that you wish you didn't find from being curious. So
Actually, that's a guarantee on all levels with curiosity. There's always some drawback that you don't like from it.
yeah, but no, I think those were all well placed questions, Joe. Um, but the one thing that I do want to add is, well, really more so a question for you is that do you feel like in your career and with do you think that curiosity is important to your success?
Very much so. Because if you're not driven enough to learn new avenues and adapt in this line of business with healthcare, it's a sink or swim business, and it's very political at certain points. So if you can't channel through those wavelengths, or however the terminology you want to use for it, you're not going to be successful in this business. So, every business I've been involved with is subject to change. And the best part of you being the best you can be is being curious, asking the challenging questions that people are unable to answer, or it's not easy to necessarily read between the lines of what's really going on, if that makes sense. So sometimes you have to do a lot of detective work to see things for what they really are, because there is a lot of smoke and mirrors in every business. Actually, really, it's not what you think it is, and sometimes it is.
And that, what you just said, Joe, I think that is one of the driving factors for my curiosity, is that I'll see something and when I look at it, I think there's something more to it. I feel like it's some things I'll see and I think like they are microcosms of different aspects of things in society or things within just a workplace or a group of people. And I think when you feel like you just saw, like sometimes you'll come across something and it might seem minute, but if something in your curiosity tells you maybe there's a little bit more than that, then, you should pursue it if it's safe to pursue and you understand the risk of what you're looking into. But I mean, that's one of the major triggers for me, is that when I see something and I'm thinking it's not isolated to this one incident, it's probably something bigger, or it's representative of something on a greater scale.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because what people fail to realize is you can't be curious and hard-headed at the same time. You won't get anywhere. You'll just look like an idiot. And a lot of people, unfortunately, have both traits. With me having a high peak of interest and curiosity, it's not the same anymore, because I'm 31 years old now. So my level of curiosity has more or less peaked in some areas. So I'm not necessarily as a spring chicken as other people may think I may be. I do play dumb a lot and play it to my advantage, just because you don't need to know everything I know. That's just how I play it. But to each his own, man. I really don't think it's necessary for you to go out there and be super curious about things without weighing out the consequences of what your actions may be. You may have an urge because you're emotionally driven by what someone says, but don't let anyone talk you out of your agenda. And I think that's very important for people to understand. You can easily get talked out of your agenda or tricked out of your spot by people that's been in the professional game, in any business, really, by just exposing yourself based off of emotional and irrational decisions you make. So that's what I mean by don't be hard-headed and curious at the same time. You can't be hungry and hard-headed, because you're going to have a lot of pitfalls ahead of you.
Yeah. And Joe, since you brought up the business piece, I always have something for the business, that business piece.
Okay.
Just waiting. But so I think about, people in certain professions, and they become curious about certain things, but as a result of being curious, they put a target on their back, and it's not a good one.
Exactly.
So how do you feel about, like, what would you tell somebody about like their curiosity and following the status quo?
It's good to ask questions, Just make sure you ask the right people those questions. Gauge them for the information they provide. I'm not saying take it with a grain of salt, but sometimes you have to. But I think what's really important is you got to understand what perspective are they giving you the information from. Is this something they're directly handling or dealing with? Or is this someone coming from that secondhand? Is it secondhand information, third hand information? These are key things you need to know.
Yeah, I agree with you because, Joe, I mean, there's situations where, like I hear people complain about their supervisor and things like that. But if you understand the hierarchy and the structure of how things work, I'll say you're mad at this person who has zero control over what they're telling you. They're essentially the mouthpiece for the higher up who doesn't want to get their hands dirty. So they just pass that on to you.
Exactly. And if you're emotional driven, you're not going to see that. And that's what I mean by being hard headed. You're curious because you want to see if you can rattle the tree. But at the same time, you have to realize what tree you're barking up.
Yeah. Because you might be just doing a whole lot of nothing, being curious. Sometimes sometimes that person that's behind the scenes pulling all the strings, you can't get anywhere near them. And you'll never hear from them because that's just how much power they have. But one thing I want to pivot towards is just, people who are starting a new job, and they're curious. They're curious about how things go. What tips would you give that person, Joe, for, understand kind of balancing their curiosity with their excitement for the new position?
Well, if you really want to last and you really want to make things work for you, I know it's going to hurt at the beginning, but do nothing. Observe. See what's going on. See how people move. See how people interact with you. Then you build. Then you become a little bit more curious. You really have to be like a turtle. If you're looking for longevity, you can be like the hare and you can get far with being the hare. But also there's a lot of entanglement that comes with that. If you're the tortoise and you're just soaking up game, you're probably going to make a lot of better decisions because you're going to see people expose themselves. You have to realize that people aren't going to be comfortable with you till maybe 3-6 months, maybe even a year, depending on who the person is and how often you interact with them. But from my experience, you have to give it at least a good 3 to 6 months before people start opening up and start singing. So,
yeah. I mean, some people just like to talk, but I mean, that brings me back. I was in a job interview and they asked me, this is the first time I think I was ever asked this question. They asked me what were my plans for the first 30, 60, and 90 days of my employment. And I answered, I said, like, I'm going to observe for a lot of this time. And then after I explained, after I have an understanding of how things work, then maybe I was like, well, then I'll begin to implement solutions. But, I kind of made it clear that I'm not going to come in here and try to be, a gunslinger out here just trying to do all this new stuff. I mean, I was hired, but, it's important. I think it's important both ways because sometimes, and that's why I asked just about the status quo, Joes. I mean, people, like in some positions, they don't want you mixing it up. They're not looking for anything. Like they're not looking for anything.
They just want you to play your damn role, okay? That's why I say don't do anything stupid. Don't be a hard ass. Play your role, and then you'll see everything else open up for what it is.
Yeah. So that's just something to really think about. I just know that the excitement is what really gets people going. And, some environments are right for that, but I think more times than not, like you're better off just figuring out what's going on. But I think that goes to Joe. I think that also just goes into people's wanting to be included and fear of being excluded. So that's one piece.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So, Joe, another question I have for you is, when, like, what do you think contributes to, like, how told the story earlier on about my dad kind of just being supportive of me being curious? What do you think contributes to someone's curiosity dying?
Exploring all the avenues, burning bridges. And that's typically how it goes. If you're too curious, you're going to burn a lot of bridges. You're going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. That's just naturally part of your personality and your makeup. Some people are really good at maneuvering around that, and some people are really cunning and charming. But when people figure you out, they figure you out. They got your number. Then they're going to start taking advantage of you. And that's usually how that game goes. I could be wrong. I may be sounding like a conspiracy theorist right now, but I'm dead serious, man. I've seen it happen too many times. The people that are usually openly in your face, they're trying to figure you out based on curiosity and excitement. Sooner or later, you don't give them everything they want. So what they do, they move on to the next thing. They can't sit down because they've never learned or took time to process it. These are the people that usually make bonehead decisions. And the only way you can really beat that is by moving on constantly. So you're like a nomad, so to speak. And who really wants to do that? Eventually you want to settle down and be chill, right? That's the goal, right?
For some.
Well, see, that's where I defer with some of the people that are probably listening to this. I like to be content with stuff. I'm not saying comfortable, but content. At least I know that there's some security or there's some people I trust. I've been in many social circles where I've had a lot of people that are very close to me and I couldn't trust them a dime with a dime. That's not a good environment to be in. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps you very sharp. You learn a lot. That's not somewhere you want to be long term, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you don't want to look over your back forever. You do want to be able to chill out at some point. At some point. So I think just going back to the business piece. Do you think that there are really employers that just want people just come in, do what they tell you, and get out?
That's all they want you to do, unless they deliberately tell you to come up with ideas and bring them to the table. And even when they ask you to come up with ideas and bring them to the table, they got to be their ideas.
Yeah.
So it's all not a ploy, but they have a certain agenda and they're just hoping that you can push their agenda forward. It's not about you. And that's one thing you got to consider. Because the minute you start making some great decisions and great choices, there's always somebody in the rafters somewhere that's preying on you, looking at your movements, studying how you move. And before you know it, they steal your ideas or they try to befriend you, which I hope happens for your sake if they're higher up, because maybe they can pull you on board with them.
Mm-hmm. But people who just some traits, I think just some traits of people that are curious is that I think people that are naturally kind of curious, not nosy people that are just like in your business just so they can this is the nosy person I'm talking about is the person who's watching you bring in groceries and when you come back from shopping and they're trying to figure out what's in the bags. Like these are the people that like their curiosity holds no value.
Yeah, there's one person that comes in mind, and I'm not going to expose them, but there's one person in college that me and you dealt with that was ridiculous. Always wanted to know where I was headed, where did I come from, where did I get this, that, and the third from. And it's like, bro, what you trying to do? Rob me on sight or something? Like, why do you need to know all this information?
And Joe,
Those people frighten me.
yeah, I can see that. I don't know who you're talking to, but I know as soon as we get done recording this shit, let me know, and I'll probably get a laugh out of it. But but no, but I think, like if you're curious and you're really looking to, like if you're someone who's curious, who really thinks like, oh, I wonder how this works, so I can figure out a better way, because you have to think that, I mean, curiosity leads to scientific breakthroughs, like innovation, all those things that we have, it's because somebody was curious. I mean, you think if you have a microphone or you have like a webcam or something, somebody probably thought to themselves, like, what happened if we put a camera into the computer and you didn't have to buy one separately, or, the first person who thought to put a CD player in a car or something, so like all this stuff was because somebody was curious. You were just curious to see what would happen if, they tried to do it, or we tried to do something, so I think it's important to, value curiosity when it's utilized in the right way, because I mean, that outside of the box thinking, I mean, it leads to a lot of discoveries and breakthroughs, and that's curiosity is responsible for, I mean, all the advances that we have today, because somebody wanted to push things a little further, and they were curious to see how would they go about it. So I mean, I think it's a positive skill to have if it's used correctly, and if you understand the repercussions of overreaching your curiosity in certain, in certain arenas.
That's the key point, man. You got to have some type of level of judgment or discernment for your level of curiosity. I understand at a young age, you may not understand it, like from a perspective of being like a baby. You're not going to know the stove is hot until you touch it, right? But I guarantee you won't touch it again. I mean, some babies may, but I know with me, I wouldn't touch that shit again. I probably would run away from it. But that's just me.
Oh, man.
So I think if you have a good instinct about what you should do and not do as far as curiosity, like if you're getting bad vibes, more than likely you're not wrong. Or you have a reason why you feel that way. So with curiosity, a lot of times you have to go with your gut feeling. And if you have a good level of judgment with your gut feeling, I say go for it. So that's why I always say curiosity is a double-edged sword, because it's damned if you do and damned if you don't. That's why I'm always so eager, if I have a friend that has an idea of what I want to do or tries to pursue something remotely close to what I do, I'm like, yeah, you go ahead and try that out. Let's see how that works for you. And when it works for them, then I'll probably entertain it, depending on whoever it is.
Yeah. I wonder how you present that, Joe. You're trying to persuade somebody or encourage somebody to pursue something out of your curiosity.
Well, first and foremost, you don't tell them. You just you just promote, you let them do them, you let them talk their points through, and you're like, yeah, man, and then you just say what you got to say. Be like, he's got a good point. I kind of want to do that too, but I'm gonna see how it works out for him. And depending on the level of success or what he did wrong or she did wrong, I would make my own judgment from there and try it out for myself if I'm still interested.
Yeah, people be smart out there. Joe just put you on the game. Be smart. Be cautious. Be cautious when you come across that. But I think I'm good on curiosity, man. I think we went over a lot, and we attacked it pretty strategically.
Got to, man. Curiosity is very important to your genetic makeup, man. This is the defining subject or moment of how you will live the rest of your life, based on your level of curiosity. So I'm just going to end on a statement that really stuck with me with one of my elders speaking to me. And the statement is people that are more likely to pursue whatever interests them early on in life are considered very unlikely to have a midlife crisis. And I really had to sit back and think about that. But I think that's very well true. Something to think about.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Joe, I think you left us all with something to think about, man. I think we should end it there.
All right.
So thanks for listening. Take care. Be safe.
Later.
Got him! Got him!